What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Team Swartz. I'm Joe Sergeant Swartz, your local New York Army National Guard's virtual recruiter, and I'm also a part-time Joe Sergeant with our respective National Guard Recruit Sustainment Program here in New York City. Today, I brought you a guest to talk about her experience pre and during COVID-19 of her basic training experience. So here is
Prior First Class Samantha Cologne, 91 Foxtrot.
All right, she's talking a little light, she's talking a little bit low, but we're gonna work on that, right? All right, so without further ado, PFC Cologne here went to Army Basic Training at which location?
Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
All right, so she went, in case you didn't hear, Fort Jackson, South Carolina for basic training, and that was right before COVID hit. So overall, how would you say your basic training experience was before we go into the whole COVID and all that stuff? Because people are gonna wanna know, what was your experience like in the beginning of COVID?
In the beginning of COVID, basic training was typical basic. We had our first phase, which was red phase. COVID didn't hit for that phase, so we basically just had a typical red phase, getting yelled at, waking up really early, PT in the morning, simple red phase stuff.
Okay, and you experienced the historical, most look forward to, maybe not in the moment, shark attack.
Horrible shark attack. Yeah, so when you go to red phase, as soon as you get off the bus, you get hit with a shark attack. So that's when you get off the bus and you gotta run to your platoon line, try to find your platoon without even knowing what your platoon is, knowing your drill sergeants without even knowing the drill sergeants, doing exactly what they say, picking your bag up, holding it over your head, throwing it on the floor, doing squats repeatedly, over and over and over until they tell you to stop.
Sucked in the moment, but it's a memory and a story for a lifetime, yeah?
Remember, it's always temporary.
Yep, it's always temporary. Never take whatever the drill sergeant says to you personal. So with that being said, she went through the initial part of Army Basic Training pre-COVID. Now, there is no shark attack when you first get there. If you want to know more about it, I will post a video over here in a card about yellow phase. When you're done watching that video, come back to this and let me know your thoughts about the all-new yellow phase and some of the restrictions and things that have been cut out and reintroduced into Army Basic Training due to COVID. So you were actually in Army Basic Training at the time that COVID hit, so there was a transition period, a little chaotic. Could you walk us through initially what happened when COVID hit and some of the immediate changes that you noticed?
So we was in the middle of white phase, which is the second phase. We just came back from our Amville, and as soon as we came back, we did our flag change. We initiated back to our, we went, changed our flag, we spoke with our commander, and that's when we got the news that COVID hit and everything has changed.
Okay, and what did they initially supply you masks, or how did that work, and how did that make you feel with everything that was going on?
So when we got the news that COVID was a thing for basic, they basically initiated the social distancing. We did barracks cleaning. We basically did, that's what we did.
Sanitizing.
Yeah.
All right, did they take you out? Because I heard a lot of stories about soldiers that were being moved out to the field. Did you have to experience that?
Yeah, so we got evicted a few times, which sucked. We got evicted approximately 6 times in basic, and each time was barracks maintenance. Cleaned up whole barracks.
Now, initially when COVID hit, did they self-quarantine you guys or isolate you guys or go through like a controlled monitoring or anything like that, similar to how yellow phase is now, where you were restricted to the company area for 10 to 14 days, or did you continue training?
So we did continue training, but we weren't allowed to leave our platoon lines. We weren't supposed to go farther than our platoon lines. The only time we went farther was when we were doing our company runs or when we were going to chow, but all of that was monitored with our drill sergeants.
So now that you've learned more about this new controlled monitoring called yellow phase, do you feel that with the new restrictions in place is better for the trainees in a training environment versus what you experienced initially when they were trying to like weigh their options and figure things out?
Yes, just because when we got hit with COVID in basic, we just staggered our beds. We were still in each other's spaces. We still had cross-contamination within the bays, but now with the yellow phase, with the plastic over your own bed, and it's a little more sanitary. It helps more.
Awesome. Yeah, so there was a huge learning curve at the beginning of COVID, and she got to experience it firsthand, transitioning from a normal basic training experience into WTF, what are we getting ourselves into with COVID, and then the Army having to rapidly adjust how they're handling things. So in the beginning, there was total chaos. A lot of people probably got self-quarantined. Do you recall, if any, how many actually tested positive for COVID while at the training site at basic for you?
So in my barracks, we had no one test positive, which is a good thing. But we did have a company behind us. They had a whole platoon test positive.
Oh, jeez. What was your most memorable moment at Army basic training?
My most memorable was when the drill sergeants told us to go back to our barracks to perform bay maintenance. And it was a calm day. We just came back from chow. We did a group meeting with our first sergeant. Then we went up to our barracks. And as soon as we stepped foot in the bay, the door was blocked with mattresses, and you hear all the drill sergeants counting down from 10, screaming and laughing while we're trying to push down the door and push all the mattresses out of the way. It was pretty funny. And when we eventually got in the room, all our mattresses were piled up, our sheets were tied, like spider webs all over the room. It was a pretty chaotic but fun experience.
Now, around that time that you were in basic training, I know the Army Combatives was canceled. I think the gas chamber was canceled, but I think at that point you had already done the gas chamber, yeah? All right. Was there anything in basic training that you found the most fun?
Combatives. When we were in red phase when we learned combatives. When we did our forge, combatives was canceled. We couldn't do the bugle sticks. We couldn't do any of that stuff. But the little time we did have a combative was pretty fun.
Yeah, I love combatives. I had done 6 months of combat hapkido and 6 months of taekwondo prior to joining the Army. I wish I had done my 5 years of Brazilian jiu-jitsu before going to basic, which wouldn't have done much for me now because it's not a thing in training right now. Was there anything that you particularly struggled with that if you had more of a heads up prior to, or would have advice to give someone who's about to experience it themselves?
Prior to basic, I would just say work out. Working out was pretty rough for me because I've never worked out before basic. Now for COVID, I would just say sanitize. I was never used to like using a lot of hand sanitizers or like making sure everything was so clean, but like you want to do it in basic because everyone gets sick in basic. You're in a room filled with 60 plus females or males. You're gonna be always around someone, so you want to make sure your area is always clean.
Any advice that you would give for females who are about to go to Army basic training? Any insights, tips, advice, anything? 'Cause I get asked all the time for tips for females, like maybe female products for TT, OTM.
So for the females, you can use any type of hygiene products you need for, personal stuff. Yes. You do get to go to the shop and buy your stuff, but you do go rarely. So when you do go, I would say stock up on as much stuff as you can for the month, for 2 months, because when I went, I only went maybe once a month. And then when the whole COVID thing happened, we barely went at all. We didn't even have time for the guys to even get their haircuts. So I would say stock up as much as you can. And even have family members send them to you if you can.
I'm glad you brought that up. So males, get your haircuts before leaving for basic training during the coronavirus pandemic. Due to the COVID-19 restrictions, you are not going to get a haircut for the first 3 to 5 weeks of Army basic training because of sanitation issues. So with that being said, go get an authorized haircut, either a fade close to the side or a baldy. Don't worry, you're not going to get smoked for it. Just make sure you knock it out. Now, would you recommend, I never included this in my packing list for basic. I didn't even think about it until this morning. So would you recommend females bringing those types of products to basic training as part of their packing list?
Yes. I would say bring the sanitation pads, bring whatever you need for that time of the month. You can bring razors, stuff like that. Pack it all, because as soon as you get to basic, they'll tell you to take out what you need, and then they will check it off to see that if it was authorized or not, and then you will be able to keep it.
Yeah. Don't bring any Midol or any type of medication or over-the-counter type aids to help you, because the Army's not going to trust whatever it is that you're bringing, and it's going to be considered contraband. You're going to give it up when you get there because it's considered contraband. So if you need any type of medication while you're at basic training to help alleviate the pain, you're going to have to go on sick call and get it prescribed from an Army physician, an Army pharmacist. Finally got it right. All right, so with that being said, yes, bring everything that she said. Don't bring the medication portion. And I was always focused with the sports bras for females, never even thinking about TTO, you know what I mean? So I'm glad you brought that up. How often did you use your cell phone while you were in Army basic training?
Prior to COVID, we used it once every phase. So we used it once in red phase, once as soon as we got there, to make a 2-minute phone call.
Which is scripted.
Which is scripted, yes. You get a paper and you got to read exactly what the paper says, and if you read anything more or less, they take your phone away. After COVID, they gave it to us, I want to say maybe every 3 weeks, depending on the situation. I know in blue phase, when we were about to graduate, we had our phone a little bit more. We even had our phone up to an hour once, just to make sure that we told our family what was going on, that we were safe, our update on graduation and our family day, and all that other stuff.
Also understand that cell phone usage or phone usage in general is a privilege, not a right. So it's really up to the drill sergeants on whether or not they afford you that opportunity and privilege to use your cell phone during training. But with that being said, your main means to communication is through snail mail, letters that you write back and forth from home. So once you get to the basic training site, they will give you your official mailing address, which you will then send at home. I recommend that you designate one person to distribute your trainee's address to everybody so that everyone can send mail in a timely fashion. So that way they're not mailing out like 20 different letters, so they can at least get that initial letter out. Because as you can attest, your first few days at Army basic training, you're so mentally and physically exhausted, you're not going to want to stay up and write letters, yeah?
Correct. For me, I have 4 people in my household, so I had them all write letters and stick it all in one letter and mail it all just at the same time. So then I got one letter with everyone's letter in it. So I would recommend that. So if you have more than one person you're writing to, you can all have them put it in one envelope and mail it out so you can get everyone's letter at the same time. I know when I was in basic and I sent out a letter, sometimes I would get responses from like 3 letters back just because how late the mail was, especially with the COVID thing going on. So I would recommend either someone picking up all the letters and shipping it all at the same time, or put it all in a package. Get everything at the same time.
And also, if you happen to get either if you test positive for COVID, or if you're next to somebody in the barracks who gets test positive for COVID, you're going to end up going into either isolation if you test negative, but you were next to somebody who tested positive, or if you do test positive for COVID, you go into quarantine or isolation, like I said, for 14 days. They will give you an address to have all your mail forwarded to that location while you're there for those 10 to 14 days. But understand, it takes about 2 weeks for a letter to get to post. So you're better off not even having anything mailed to you at that location, because by the time you receive it, you'll already be gone, hopefully, if everything goes well and you test negative, to get back to training. And by then, when you go back to training, more than likely, you're going to get recycled to a new platoon starting at day 0. Best case scenario, you'll go back to the beginning of the phase that you were just at before getting tested positive, or like I said, next to somebody who tests positive for COVID. So just keep that in mind. If you do go into isolation or self-quarantine, you will have access to your cell phone the entire time, because all you're pretty much going to get are 3 meals per day and confined to your room. They'll have books and stuff for entertainment purposes, but your cell phone will be readily available to you while you're in your room. So everyone asks about the Army Combat Fitness Test. How was it? What was your experience? What were your struggles, and what would you recommend somebody about to go to basic?
So for the ACFT, because in October the ACFT will be the only authorized PT test for the Army, we did take the ACFT in basic and in AIT. For me, the most challenging thing was the leg tuck. So females do not, with their anatomy, they do not have a lot of upper body strength, so that's unfortunately me. I don't have a lot of upper body, so the leg tuck was the worst part. So everything else was pretty cakey.
Alright, so the APFT, right, the old Army Physical Fitness Test, it's dead. I killed it. It's in the back. We buried it. It's done and it's over with. The ACFT is the new standard. I will post a card right over here about the ACFT and all about it. That is the new standard. However, at least for the rest of this year and most likely for next year, all the way through or up to 2022, the Army itself is not mandating that you pass it, probably due to the coronavirus pandemic, closing the gyms, and you not having that ability to have access to the proper equipment to properly train for the ACFT. So that'll give us more than enough time to transition and to start preparing ourselves for the ACFT. The drill sergeants aren't going to tell you this. You don't have to pass it to meet the graduation requirements. If that's the only thing that you're missing, you will move on, graduate, and go on to the next step, which is your advanced individual training. Unless that changes, that's the new standard. Again, the drill sergeants are going to tell you that. They have to execute the ACFT and measure you to standard. So understand that you are still going to be tested and expected to pass, but in the event that you fail, you're still going to move forward. So just do your part, train hard, and get it done. She was saying the leg tuck, you know, based on the anatomy and stuff like that, females versus males, right? Females fail at 70% on that particular event versus 30% of the male counterpart. So with that being said, train your upper body, hang from a bar, or even carry kettlebells, right? The farmers carry. Work on your grip strength, right? And your endurance of the grip strength. So hang from a bar, do some pull-ups, work your upper body and your upper back, work on some leg raises, knee raises, do some forward planks, side planks, do whatever you can to work your core and your upper body, and I guarantee you'll get at least one leg tuck. Yeet, get to the top, man. Yeet to the top. Both knees need to touch your elbows. Your arms do not need to flex like this, like a pull-up. They just need to flex. So this is flex, this is fine, this is authorized. Just can't be straight arm like this and bring your knees to your elbows, okay? So yeah, I'll be doing a separate video on that, and just stay tuned to my channel. We'll get that up as soon as possible. Well, there you have it, straight from PFC Cologne, from her mouth to your ears. That was her basic training experience. If you have any additional questions of Army basic training, you can post them down in the comment section there. She may chime in and give her insights as well as myself, and I will see you in the next video.
Got it.
Hold up! Wait a minute. Like this video and follow me on social, and while you're at it, go ahead and check out one of my other videos right over here. Just pick one. They're pretty cool. I mean, I liked it. I mean, I was in it. Spoiler alert. I teach you something. Just saying.